Georgie and Mandy's first marriage reveals one unexpectedly devastating detail of George Sr.'s death. One influential absence in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage Season 1, Episode 5, Thanksgiving, was always going to be George Sr.'s, affecting Georgie and all the Coopers, but the episode sneakily revealed how his death also greatly impacted others. One of Georgie and Mandy's first marriage's major topics has been the aftermath of George Sr.'s death, showing how it impacted Georgie in particular, but also Missy and Mary. Thanksgiving had Georgie going around to convince the Coopers to spend the holiday together, doing the best he could not to fail Georgie's promise to George in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage. The first Thanksgiving without George Sr. was inevitably going to be heavy for the Coopers, but Georgie and Mandy's first marriage episode 5 surprisingly revealed one unexpected consequence of George Sr.'s death. Young Sheldon Season 7, Episodes 13 and 14 used the grief of George's friends like Coach Wilkins to make the immediate aftermath of his death lighter. Even in jest, those moments nonetheless highlighted George Sr.'s impact on all those around him, not just his family. Thanksgiving, showing how affected the McAllisters still were by George Sr.'s death, thus continues to build on that underexplored young Sheldon storyline. First Marriage Episode 5 reveals how Jim and Audrey are also impacted by George's death. The McAllisters have a hard time moving on after George's death too. Georgie and Mandy's first marriage episode 5 showing the first Thanksgiving after George Sr.'s death always meant things were going to be tenser. But the McAllisters being so understanding and saddened by the loss themselves was something new in the Big Bang Theory franchise. Young Sheldon's series final obviously had no time to focus on them, but even Georgie and Mandy's first marriage only showed Jim's unwavering support for Georgie when he missed George Sr., however. Thanksgiving unequivocally showed Jim, Audrey, and Mandy all visibly affected by the loss and not being able to spend the holiday with Georgie's father. Jim and Mandy both said they expected to celebrate many Thanksgivings with George Sr., showing how the loss affected them on a personal level too. From Georgie and Mandy's first marriage's usual villain, Audrey immediately accepting Georgie's idea that he, Mandy, and Cece should spend Thanksgiving with Mary, to her increased worry over Jim drinking multiple beers. Audrey was simultaneously touched by Georgie's worry for Mary and thinking of her own husband's health. Jim and Mandy also counted their blessings when remembering George Sr., being grateful for their being still alive and together, but also actively missing the Cooper patriarch. Indeed, Jim and Mandy both said they expected to celebrate many Thanksgivings with him, showing how the loss affected them on a personal level too. Why the McAllisters are deeply affected by George's death despite their brief encounters. George Sr. always welcomed the McAllisters in young Sheldon. The bond between the Coopers and the McAllisters was never deep, as the two families only briefly met with one another. However, those meetings were actively championed by George Sr. and Jim. When Audrey briefly disowned Mandy, George welcomed Jim's attempts to support Mandy, and even pushed him to talk to his daughter. Similarly, when Georgie and Mandy were about to secretly marry, it was George that warned Jim. In all their encounters, George was the well-meaning glue that kept Coopers and McAllisters together, making it entirely reasonable for the McAllisters to miss him in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage.